But it's Camille Norment. She's a multimedia artist from the United States, and her talk it's called Invisible Things. Please welcome.
Hi, I'll speak a little bit more about invisible things. It's clearly a topic that needs further addressing. When I was invited to speak at the symposium, I was immediately bombarded with a number of reflections. I wanted to put them down in text and present them for you here today before they faded away and I went back to my daily routine. I'm Camille Norment, professional artist, musician, writer. Camille Norment, one-time senior engineer in Silicon Valley. Hi, I'm Camille Norment. 2 kids, a dog, and a Knut. Knut's the name of my partner, who is also an artist. Not too long ago, I remember feeling very proud when I read the New York Times, and Deborah Singer had a public statement regarding her resignation as curator from the Kitchen, which is one of New York's best experimental performance centers. She said that she was not at all ceasing to work. She was simply shifting things around. She was seeking more balance. She wanted to make it home in time to read her son bedtime stories. And yet, I also wondered if I would somehow feel even more proud if that statement had been made by a man. Reflections. That was one instance of many thoughts that come to me here and there through my daily routine. I've experienced so many times in the past 12 years as a mother artist that in the art world, somehow the word family seems to have dirty connotations. In most biographies written about me, including many that I've written about myself, I'm described as an African American artist. I don't think I've ever seen it written down that I'm a woman artist. Camille Norment is a woman artist. It just doesn't seem to work, does it? So then I thought, how would the bio read that would include my gender, my existence as a woman? Camille Norment is an African American woman artist. Camille Norment is a woman artist who is also African American. Camille Norment is an artist who is so forth and so on. Somehow immediately, the descriptors fall apart. Reflections. I speculated about the time, perhaps in the future, where I might be described as human. But then I thought, well, what would the world be that would decide that as a descriptor would be necessary? However, in the last couple of weeks, I've been thrown into a situation that has turned all thoughts into heavy loads that gravity could not bear any more weight towards. I experienced the slow and painful death of a family member, a loved one, my father-in-law. The funeral was only on Friday, which is why I was unfortunately not able to attend most of this symposium. During this time, I found it absolutely impossible to think about my relationship to the art world. I thought it was absolutely undesirable during those times. Any extended thoughts that I did have were immediately drawn to those, particularly to those women, for whom daily life struggles are really a much closer battle for life than my own. I thought again of the bones of discarded baby girls that are still found scattered by animals in the fields. I thought of women, dwellers in my own city, who refused to tell the doctor who it was that organized and executed the removal of their clitoris. These women who limp walk to the doctor only out of desperation because of infection. I remembered beloved, the novel by renowned author and poet Toni Morrison, in which a slave woman kills her infant daughter to prevent her from growing up as a slave. The story goes on to say that slavery was abolished and the ghost of the child returns to haunt the tormented mother. I thought again about the atrocities against women worldwide and how they far outnumber the achievements that we are here to celebrate. With the rapidly changing global power structures, I thought how fragile it all is, our world. And I thought about the invisible ways in which the feminism is a dirty word, or feminism is not necessary anymore. Mentality of many young people in our own society can be more of a threat than we could even imagine. I thought about my daughter and how I could affect the world for her benefit as a woman, and how I might affect the world for these other women, those who are outside of my direct gaze, outside of my zone of privilege. There's change all around us, for better and for worse. And as Toni Morrison said, invisible things are not necessarily not there. I consider my personal relationship to feminism as holistic and inseparable from the extended crises of human rights in general. In a world ruled by hypervisibility, we are led to believe that everything can be seen. But as Ralph Ellison described in his 1952 novel, Invisible Man, hypervisibility renders the unvisible. As women in the West gained equal rights by law and later joined workforce forces, women gained presence. Similar patterns happened in the art world. It seemed on the surface that this was an equal opportunity presence. We expected the mirror to reflect what was put in front of it. Throughout much of my work, I've taken an interest in the dichotomies of disappearance and the persistence of presence of the subject, but also of histories. And while this is not the only focal area of my work, there are a few works which I wanted to share with you that represent this study. This is a work called Drift Glass. And from an angle, which is the image on the left, the object appears to be a normal mirror, reflecting its environment. However, when you stand directly in front of the mirror, you become invisible. It is never possible to catch your own reflection in this mirror. Everything else in your environment is crystal clear, but you can never find yourself. As the body moves closer to the mirror, usually in a desperate attempt to find its reflection, where am I? I have to be here somewhere. I can see everyone and everything else. Where am I? A sound emanates from the mirror. The sound is as harsh as microphone feedback, and it gets louder as the body approaches its goal, the mirror, which of course repels the body back again. So the body is caught in this loop of trying to discover oneself and being reflected back, being rejected in the attempt. The body is negated visibly, but affirmed by the sound. Again, invisible things are not necessarily not there. Next slide. The 1955 Schei microphone has come to represent what is considered to be the golden years of popular culture by some. It often gives the image of rock stars like Elvis, but also blues singers such as Billie Holiday. And these blues singers, such as Billie Holiday, were those who actually lived in segregation while consumers were enjoying their music. In this work, I removed the microphone components from the microphone itself and replaced it with a very bright burning light, a very positive, attracting image. And yet, what is cast on the wall is a shadow, the shadow of the body that is not present. the invisible thing, the psychology of these singers who put their voices into this object, the presence of those who are still voiceless today. The glowing light seems to be affirmative, but the shadow does tell another story. Furthermore, I programmed the light to flicker, so the light itself is not the success. It's still a struggle. It flickers like a dying light. It flickers like a noise on the line. It struggles, but it is persistent. Sociologist Avery Gordon, in her book Ghostly Matters, likens negated presence to ghosts. In this, she speaks of people, but also of social histories. She writes that the ghost is a social figure, and investigating it can lead to that dense site where history and subjectivity make social life. This figure, this ghost, as Gordon calls it, is a type of collective memory, however active and however repressed. Memory affects our thoughts and guides our actions. It is the experience of the body, the experience of society. Memory can remind us still that there are voices unheard and bodies still rendered invisible. We all live with the ghosts of our own social and cultural histories, especially as we struggle as women artists today. These metaphorically range from those with the weakest whisper tucked away neatly out of conscious range to those still enraged doppelganger, guiding with full force one's everyday actions. Next slide, please. I believe that artistic practice is inevitably a study of social life. Gordon goes on to say that to study social life, one must confront the ghostly aspects of it. She refers to this image entitled "There Are Crossroads Where Ghostly Signals Flash from the Traffic" by Jamie Gordon from the 1990s, early 1990s. This image takes its title from a Walter Benjamin quotation, which is, "There are crossroads where ghostly signals flash from the traffic, and inconceivable analogies and connections between events are the order of the day. It is a task to seek out and reveal these connections, to unveil the world that is being described by them in order to complete the picture of the present." It's not about obsessing with the past, but rather about acknowledging that contemporary experience is situated within the dynamic space of slippage between past, present, and future. Again, rendering the invisible or thought to be forgotten as visible and acknowledged. Next slide. When Hurricane Katrina hit the United States in 2005, and devastated New Orleans, I was reminded of how easy it is to undervalue human life. In response, I created a paradoxical character that plays upon cultural dissonance and interweaves the past with the present. I call her the apparition, or I should rather say that she created herself and appeared to me. This apparition is a reckoning of history, of what modern history has rendered as ghostly. A persona, a language describing the effective historical and mnemonic structures of memory. She is a social figure who appeared in my practice one day and declared herself to be there longer than I would be. In this still life performance, as I call it, I place myself in the time of the origin of a rare musical instrument that I play. The instrument is called the glass harmonica. I appear in the character of the apparition. The glass harmonica was invented in 1761 by Benjamin Franklin, during the Age of Enlightenment. Of course, the era that praised itself for its scientific and cultural and social achievements contemplated the rights of man, and yet women were still not considered equals by law, and slavery was justified as a qualifiable economic means. Next slide. The instrument itself looks like a sewing machine. On the left, you can see the enormous spindle, which has today been replaced by a motor and a smaller wheel. But in playing it, with my hands around water, I still feel myself to be sewing, in a way. Next slide. This instrument was used by Franz Mesmer to mesmerize hysterical women in the Paris salons. Next slide. In all of this irony, and I'll skip ahead, I was further reminded of women who thousands of years ago would place an amulet around the neck of their sleeping child, in which was inscribed Lila Abi, or Lilith, be gone, for protection, in fear that Lilith, the demon, would steal the breath of their children while they slept. Mother, Lilith, lullaby. Taking the scope of the world view, women still bear the title of angel and demon. In this performance, I wore a bright glowing light around my neck. It was not a gesture of fear, but rather of empowerment, a symbol of change, an acknowledgement of the presence and control of the destiny for the future. I'll end there.